Yo, what is up, guys? Will here from Fantasy Flock Basketball. I'm here with Canyon, and we are talking top 12 updated forward rankings for the rest of the season. We've gotten to see, 10 plus games from pretty much every guy on this list here, so feel pretty good about updating this list. It's going to be some surprises, some guys who have definitely shot up and made their case to be top 12 rest of season guys. But we're talking forward eligibility, so if you think there's a guy who should be on this list, potentially they were in the guard video, or we're going to be talking about them in the updated center rankings. So kicking it off here, no surprise, number one, Giannis. Giannis has just been a monster. He's been doing exactly what he did, and throughout last season. I expect that to maintain, even without Chris Middleton, right, to start the season. Even when he comes back and we get Drew healthy again, I still feel like Giannis is just going to keep putting up the numbers he did last season with those two guys. So I don't even feel like I need to spend a ton of time on Giannis. Insane scoring, obviously, super strong rebounding. The assist numbers have been pretty decent as well, carrying from last season. And then the defensive stats. And I feel like that's all I need to say. Giannis, number one.
No brainer. Number two, we've got KD, Kevin Durant here, averaging about 31, 6, and 5. He's had some really high assist upside this season amidst all the changes on that team with Kyrie, Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, all these guys being hurt or out for other reasons. KD's been the constant. He's played 14 games for them already. He's obviously going to be around 30 points, per game. He's one of the best scorers in the league. His rebound numbers are kind of what we imagined, but the assist numbers are really what have been really nice to me. Guys like Edmund Sumner, Royce O'Neal, Nick Claxton around him, he's finding ways to get them involved at a very efficient rate, averaging 50 fantasy points per game. I think he's clearly number two here, and even if Kyrie comes back, which we've been hearing news that he might be coming back sooner than later, I think KD's still up here for sure. We've seen him and Kyrie both thrive together on the court. So I think KD just will be around 30 points, and this assist upside is just a really good thing to see. And then also, defensively, he's been pretty good too. A steal and 2 blocks a game is pretty incredible. So KD's been doing it all for this Brooklyn team, no matter what the starting lineup looks like.
Definitely. And a third here, we've got Jayson Tatum, who's had an equally, strong scoring start to the season. I mean, he's at, 31 points per game, and I didn't even expect this increase from him. These last 2 seasons, we've seen him average around 26, 27 points per game, and he's doing 31 right now on not crazy efficient shooting. It's just kind of shooting numbers that you kind of expect to maintain throughout the season, just super high volume, a little bit more efficient, but even if that dips a little bit and he's a 28 points per game guy or something like we've seen in the past 2 seasons, decent rebounding numbers. He's averaging 7+ right now. The assists, okay floor, right? He's going to give you 3 or 4 a night. And the defensive stats have been pretty decent too. He's just one of those guys where I think this top 3 is, pretty clear and solid for me. I mean, Tatum, I expect this to maintain.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty solid top 3. And at number 4, though, was making a case to crack into that top 3. It's Pascal Siakam having an MVP caliber year before he got hurt. 25 points, 9 boards, almost 8 assists with some defensive stats in there. Just doing it all, triple double watch, looking like baby Luke out there. The points is not at an elite level as the guys ahead of him, but the peripherals are, right? He's going to be around a double-double in either rebounds or assists, but it is the injury concerns that is pretty worrisome. He's going to be out for at least another week, I believe, with that groin injury, and he's had a history of that injury as well, so only played 9 games thus far. He's going to be out for a few more, so, he was pushing that top 3, but I think right now, 1, out of respect for how incredible he was to start this season, and 2, because of the injury, I think he should just stay here at 4.
Yeah, definitely. And I do want to say too, at this 4 spot, it might seem high for a guy who's, dealing with an injury right now that he's had a past. I know there's kind of some risk and fear there, but for me, when he's back, fantasy points per game and just night in and night out, I think he's just going to be top 4 on this list pretty easily, if not top 5. Next up here, we've got LeBron, another guy who's, kind of missing some games here and there. That's a thing that LeBron's going to do throughout the season. But still, even with the fall off that we're seeing people talk about for LeBron James, he's still going to average right around 25 points, 8 boards, and 7 assists, which is just such an elite floor for a guy like LeBron. So, you can say what you want about true shooting percentages and how he looks out there, but fantasy production, which is what we care about for the most part, I think it's going to maintain kind of the same old LeBron, right? He's just going to be a 25, 8, and 7 guy. The usage is still going to be crazy for LeBron, like we've seen consistently throughout his career and with the Lakers. So he's one of those guys where, I do like the top 4 ahead of him, but I think from a fantasy points per game perspective, when he does play, he's going to be a top 5 guy.
Yeah, he's been the definition of consistency since 2003. So I'm really okay with LeBron being there at 5. At number 6 here, we've got Jimmy Butler, another guy that can kind of do it all and has a pretty high floor, averaging 22, 6, 6, 2 steals this year. He's just going to get 43, 44 fantasy points per game for you in just any way possible on the court, whether it's, a high scoring night or a high assist night or a high steals night. He just does it all, and he finds ways to get to that, fantasy points per game level for you. It might not be the prettiest player, the flashiest player, the player with the most upside, but he's got a high floor, kind of like LeBron. He's just got such a high floor and will end up scrapping his way into 20-ish points and some good peripherals and some really good defensive upside, which he's been doing for a while now. And he's played 11 games, so he's been healthier than most guys on this list. So there's a lot to like about Jimmy Butler at 6.
Definitely. And right behind here at the 7th spot, we've got Paul George. I think he's had a pretty decent start to the season. It's pretty comparable to what we saw at the end of last year when he came back, and the year before that for the Clippers. Obviously, it's happening without Kawhi for a lot of these games, but even with Kawhi returning, I just kind of expect it to maintain. I think Kawhi's kind of going to be a nightmare this season from a fantasy perspective. We saw him being eased in the first couple of games. He's missing significant time. He's expected to come back and play in some of these games soon, but I still think it's going to be in a limited capacity, and I still think he's going to rest back-to-backs and miss significant portions of the season with the injury. So I think Paul George is one of those guys who, obviously coming back from his own injury, I feel a lot better rest of season. I know he's dealing with a hand injury right now, but I think he's one of those guys where I feel pretty safe about the usage and production, even with looming Kawhi coming back. I think Paul George is still going to be at a good spot.
Yeah, I think Paul George still has, room to grow on the season too. I think he can only get better as the season goes on. Number 8 here, we've got DeMar DeRozan, a guy that last year would have been probably a lot higher, but he's come back down to earth a little bit as far as scoring and even peripherals a little bit, but he's still going to be a usage monster on this Bulls team. He's still going to play a lot of games on the season. Knock on wood, but he's averaging 24, 4, and 4 the steal right now. Just a very, very solid, consistent guy all across the board. Had a couple bad games this year. One was a blowout, and one was against a couple really good defensive players and teams, but 24, 4, and 4 is just a solid stat line across the board. Not crazy upside on those peripherals, though, but he does have crazy upside on the points with his usage. And if, he has a game without Levine, he's going to get so much of that work. So not as high as he could be from last year, but you still have to respect a guy that's going to get, 20-plus shots up a game and can put up 30 at any given night.
Definitely. And next up here at the 9th spot, definitely a surprise to have on this list. I don't think anyone would have anticipated this heading into the season, even though he was a popular sleeper pick. But it's Lauri Markkanen, who's had an insane start for the Jazz. Just really, really high upside scoring. And I know it's kind of funny comparing that to a lot of other guys on this list. He's definitely at the lower portion, but I think from what you expected from him, and he's giving you, pretty strong rebounding numbers as well. So I think he's one of those guys where, heading into the season, we were wondering who was going to be the guy who was going to soak up this, Donovan Mitchell usage in some capacity. I think a lot of people thought it was going to be Colin Sexton, and it's just kind of just been Lauri Markkanen. And I think the one thing with Lauri, I think compared to a lot of other guys on this list, is we've seen it from everyone else on this list for the most part, other than one other guy, where we've seen it in spurts, whether it's previous season or, for multiple seasons before that. So I do think he does carry a little bit of kind of question mark of, you see some of these games where he has 13 points and doesn't shoot a ton. And, there's a little bit of worry about consistency from an offensive usage standpoint. But I still think from what I've seen from Lauri and this Jazz team, I still think he's going to be able to maintain the fantasy production he's had up until this point. I don't think he is a get him off your roster, sell high, he's going to drop off and fall off a cliff. I expect it to maintain in some capacity with what he's been doing.
Yeah, and he's played 15 games so far, which is, I think, almost all of the games for the Jazz. So, yeah, he could be playing a lot of games this season, which is actually, a huge factor in your fantasy teams. So speaking of which, at 10 here after Lauri, we've got Zion Williamson. He could be higher. Obviously, Zion's one of the most talented guys we've seen in a long time. But I'm still just pretty concerned about the injury. He's played 11 games, which is pretty solid to start the season so far. But, his rebound numbers are down a little bit. His points numbers are a little down, but, 23 and a half points per game is obviously very solid. 6.4 rebounds and about 4 assists. The assist numbers look really good. He's had some good facilitative games and high assist numbers throughout the seasons thus far, but the rebound numbers are a little low. The points are fair. I think he's got really good upside in points. Obviously, I think he can have games in the 30s any given night as well, but just injury-wise, I'm just really concerned, right? This is a guy that, if you're a Pelicans fan, Zion fan, or just NBA fan, you're crossing your fingers every time you see him hit the court. that he can stay healthy. And so just with the injury history and concerns, I have him a little lower because I don't think he'll play as many games as maybe any of these guys on this list. But obviously he's got insane upside. If he does stay healthy and play, he can be a 28-9 guy. But a little slower start to the season, but I mean, there's still some good things to see from him.
Definitely. And next up on this list, he's a guy who, I think you could argue, should be even higher on this list with what he's shown to start the season, but it's the rookie Banchero. Man, he has just been insane. I think immediate superstar. And I think it's one of those things where for rookies, for the most part, this is something, obviously it's unprecedented what he's doing right now for the most part. I mean, it's pretty insane rookie numbers, but it's something you usually don't see until the All-Star break, even for these rookies that break out. It usually takes them, at least half the season to kind of get to this point where they can get anywhere close to his production. And he's been right up there with a lot of guys on this list, definitely right up there in fantasy points per game with kind of 8 through 12 on this list. I think he could be anywhere in there. But, obviously dealing with the foot injury right now, I think he'll be back soon. But, the Magic, they've dealt with a lot of injuries, right? They're a team that their daily lineup is riddled with players who are out or questionable. But I still think that Banchero will be able to maintain usage even when those guys come back. So I think he's one of those guys he's 17th in offensive usage right now, which is insane. I mean, he's like neck and neck with like Siakam and Kyrie Irving per game, which is just crazy for a rookie to step in and do that. But I think on this Magic team, I think it's something you can expect to maintain. And, strong scoring, strong rebounding. I think it's something we'll see, through the season. I don't expect him to be able to build on what he's doing right now, especially with some of these Magic guys coming back. But still, I think he's shown that he's not a sell high. He's a guy who's breaking out already.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's got more usage than I think Devin Booker right now and Cade Cunningham. So an incredible trust that team has in him, and he's performing obviously incredible for them. Last up here at 12, we've got Brandon Ingram. Has been dealing with a little bit of injuries as well on that Pelicans team, but I love Brandon Ingram's upside and his peripherals. He's at 21, 6, and 4 right now. I think that can be a lot higher, but we've seen some really good high assist games. At the time of this recording, I think last night he had around 9 assists, but this is a guy that, any given night, he can give you, high 20s in scoring, and then he can give you 8 boards or 8 assists, one or the other, any given night, or both. So I like his versatility, right? He was such a impact player for the Pelicans at the end of last season, and I think he can continue to do that through this season. But there is a lot of mouths to feed on that Pelicans team. You've got McCollum, you've got Zion, you've got Val, and you've obviously got Ingram. And so I think if the scoring can go up and the usage can go up a little bit more, he can climb this list. But he should have a pretty high floor in points, rebounds, and assists moving forward, as well as defensive stats. He'll sneak in a steal and a block a game or one or the other, but I think he definitely deserves to be number 12 with, how widespread and how versatile he is as a player as far as fantasy production goes, with his peripherals. And then obviously he's got a pretty high ceiling in points as well.
Definitely. So that's our top 12. I want to go through some honorable mentions really quick. These are guys who definitely could have been at that 12 spot or found a way into the top 12. They're, it was really close to kind of pin down these, but guys who definitely deserve to be mentioned. We've got OG Anunoby, who's had a pretty strong start to the season. I mean, he's a defensive player of the year candidate with what he's doing. So even though the defensive stats have been pretty crazy and you don't expect those to maintain based off what he's done, historically, I think he can put up strong numbers and could have the best defensive stat season of his career. He's just, such an elite defender too. So I think the scoring obviously is not going to be near where a lot of the other guys in this list. And I think you can argue that, we could even see a dip in his production because he is kind of a beneficiary of circumstance, right? With no Siakam for a significant stretch here to start the season, with Van Vliet missing some games here and there and Gary Trent missing some games. But still, I think he'll be strong and it will probably be a top 15, forward guy alongside a lot of these, bottom of the list, top 12 guys. Also got Julius Randle for the next year. I think it was kind of an interesting question to see if he'd be able to, have strong scoring numbers when you bring in a guy like Jalen Brunson, who we expected to take a significant offensive usage. And, him, Brunson, and Barrett have kind of all been able to kind of have their 19, 20 plus point games. And I think that'll maintain. So I think he's got a decent floor, with the scoring, with kind of the shot volume he's putting up right now. And he's going to give you like nine boards a game. So a decent floor guy, but I still think I prefer the upside of some of the other guys on this list. And then Keldon Johnson, who's, another beneficiary of circumstance for this Spurs team, right? With Murray leaving. Him and Vassell have just been really, really strong offensive usage guys. And, I think I expect that to maintain from him. I think he'll have that opportunity this season for the Spurs team, and be able to put up the numbers he's putting up right now, which is kind of put him right at the end of kind of top 15. And then Andrew Wiggins as well, I think, is another guy who just kind of deserves to be mentioned, who's kind of up here in fantasy point production. But once again, I kind of lean towards the upside of some of these other guys on this list versus Wiggins, but I think he deserves to be mentioned with what he's done up till this point. All right, let us know if we missed anybody, if there's any honorable mentions we should have talked about, or any guys who you think should be in the top 12 that we didn't mention. Let us know. We'd love to hear in the comments, and we'll see you in the next one.